Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our conversation with the Ambassador to the Holy See. And Chiara, welcome to you. Welcome, Chiara Porro from Rome, the Vatican. And thanks for being part of our 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And the people viewing this, you will be part of that as well. So thank you for joining that. Chiara, you've been the Australian Ambassador to the Holy See since September last year, in the middle of COVID. What an interesting moment to arrive in a new job, let alone an international new job. But so we're here to hear more about your role, and Rosie will ask our first question. So thanks, Rosie.
Thanks, Cindy. Thanks for joining us, Chiara, and thank you to everyone who's joining in to listen. Chiara, you're the second female and the youngest ambassador to the Holy See, Australian ambassador to the Holy See. But before that, you've had a very interesting career. You've been in Sierra Leone, Tahiti, India. I imagine you have been exposed or become familiar with some of the human trafficking issues in those countries. Could you talk a little bit about how that work has informed your who you are and your interest in human trafficking?
Sure. Well, thanks firstly to ACRAF for inviting me to participate and to share my experiences and my job here at the Holy See. So as you mentioned, I've been working in the diplomatic service for over 10 years now, and interestingly, sadly, in a way, human trafficking has really been present in all of my jobs across the world, in fact, starting very much from my first posting in India, which you mentioned, which I think was really where I experienced firsthand the impact human trafficking, modern slavery has on the lives of even the very young. I spent some time in the slums in Bhubaneswar in Orissa, which is one of the poorest states in India, working with young girls who, including to help them, we were providing projects to educate girls to help them or prevent them from it being forced into marriage at an early age. And I also visited former sex workers there, and that really gave me an insight on the ground, very much on the ground, about the situation and some of the challenges being faced. I also worked there on some of the human trafficking from the south of India, and heard horrific stories about young families that were being told that it would take a few hours to get to Australia by boat. Things like that you really realise how important things like information and education are in the fight against human trafficking. I also, as you mentioned, spent some time in the Pacific. There, I was really confronted by issues of domestic violence and violence against women and children. That's another issue, I think, which needs to be overcome with education and information. In the Pacific, you have these small communities where it's very difficult to address some of these issues because everyone knows everyone. In Africa, I spent some time in Burkina Faso and Niger, and including Niger is really one of the trafficking routes from Africa up into Europe, and these are some of the poorest countries in the world where you really see the desperation. No one wants to be, and how easy it is to fall into the trap of human trafficking. So all of these experiences have really influenced my development, my career, my experiences, and actually arriving here in Rome and working at the Holy See, it's been quite incredible to see how everything has sort of come together in a sense. Pope Francis has really prioritized or sees issues such as human trafficking and modern slavery as really priority areas for the Catholic Church. But for me, also the global perspective that the Catholic Church and the Holy See has here from Rome is so important, and really makes the Holy See a critical actor in this area because they have the networks and this global perspective.
Chiara, when Maurice Payne announced your appointment last year, she said Australia and the Holy See have a valuable relationship underpinned by cooperation on a range of issues of mutual interest, including human trafficking and modern slavery, as well as Indigenous issues and sustainable development goals. So clearly the priority is, it's a priority with our government, that connection with the Holy See. She mentioned a valuable relationship underpinned by cooperation. Can you talk a little bit about what that cooperation is between the Holy See and our government in terms of shining a spotlight on human trafficking?
Sure. Yeah, I think as I mentioned before, the value that the Catholic Church really brings is including on a whole range of issues, but particularly on issues such as human trafficking, is the global network that the church has. And one of the things I've done since I've arrived here is work quite closely with the UISG, which is one of the coordinating bodies for religious sisters, and they have a network called Talitha Kum, which Akrat is a part of as well, which brings together and supports this network of religious sisters around the world, and provides training, information, resources, networking to consolidate that network. So, partnerships, and through my work, I've tried to support the role of Talitha Kum and other offshoots of that, and have engaged quite frequently with UISG and the religious sisters, and as have other embassies here, because we really see it as a critical part of one of the critical arms of the Catholic Church in addressing this issue. The other thing I've done, and the Australian government has been doing, particularly under COVID, been reaching out to a couple of the other organisations, the other Catholic organisations here in Rome that work with human trafficking victims. Italy is actually one of the, as you would know, a lot of the trafficked victims from Africa, many arrive in Italy, and so there is quite a presence here. And through this outreach that I've done, I've been able to speak and support, particularly with young women who have been trafficked and who are trying to find their feet here. And that for me has been also an opportunity to see the context on the ground, and be able to provide input into how organisations like the Australian government can be more effective. I've also, Australia has done a lot of work, and the Australian government, with our Modern Slavery Act, and I think there's lots. And the Catholic organisations too in Australia have done a lot of work, and in particular the Australian Catholic Anti-Slavery Network, but also Akrat. So I try to also bring our experiences here to Rome to be able to share some of the things that we've done in Australia, and to I guess pass on best practice, including, for example, through groups such as the Santa Marta group, which is this partnership with law enforcement organisations. So the Australian Federal Police is a part of this grouping. It's been a little bit affected by COVID, unfortunately, because they haven't been able to meet, but it's a key forum to be able to share expertise, and it's facilitated again by the Catholic Church. Another area which I think has been quite which I want to explore more as well is with sport, and the value of sport in helping some of these victims overcome their experience, the abuse they went through. And so I've been working with Atletica Vaticana, which is the Vatican sports team. They do a lot of outreach for refugees, but also victims of trafficking. I participated in one of their events, which was an athletic competition where we had two Ghanaians who had been trafficked from Ghana and arrived by boat, and just being able to interact with them. I remember the young Ghanaian man saying to me, because I was speaking to him in the margins of this event, you know, he didn't know who I was, but he said, "Oh, thank you for coming to speak to me, because I don't often, people don't usually ask about my story. They don't, you know, they're not so interested." So you could see that even just that engagement, giving these people a voice, is so important. And through these various, and you know, something like a sports event is quite informal, open, everyone can participate. We're all equal in that context, and it's very important. The other thing that I've been working a little bit with Walk Free, which is they set up in 2014 with the Vatican the Global Freedom Network, and most recently they've been doing some work in Africa, and have launched an app which is called Faith for Freedom, which is to support faith leaders to address, to identify and address issues of trafficking, modern slavery in their communities. We know faith leaders have quite an important pastoral role, but are also, you know, in amongst the community, so can easily identify some of these issues and help address them. So I've also been working a bit with Walk Free to support their engagement with the Vatican as well. So that's a little bit of an overview of some of the things that we've been doing here as the Australian government in terms of our engagement with the Vatican. As you mentioned, you know, during COVID, it's been a little difficult to do. Well, I would have liked to have done a lot more, but I think, you know, establishing these networks has been quite important, and now going forward, we'll be able to do a lot more, I hope.
Chiara, it's been lovely hearing the networks that you're working with. It was actually Talitha Kum. We had one of our conversations was with Talitha Kum. We had a global and a local perspective around human trafficking. And when we heard Abby, who lives in Japan, she's the Asian leader, correct me if I'm wrong, Rosie, and she sort of was encouraging us to just think about, you know, her day-to-day existence and what Talitha Kum were doing. And then we had our Australian or Pacific region leader, and it's impressive, but a very different style of work. So I would imagine all the different people that you've talked about, we know some of them, but they're all different, aren't they? Like, you must have to wear not a different hat, because that's your role, but how is it when you go and meet with someone who, like even the athlete, or then someone else, I know a lot of it might be on Zoom, but their role is in the head stuff or the heart stuff, or how does that all go, really?
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I mean, it's the best part of my job, where I'm able to do a variety of different things in the course of a day and engage with so many different people. And I have to say, I mean, one of the things that's really struck me, you know, people speak about, you know, when you come to Rome, there's the beauty and you know, everything that's so magnificent here, and but actually for me it's really been the people that I've met, and a lot of, you know, religious men and women and priests, but also a lot of lay people who are so active and have experiences from all over the world and have worked in some of the toughest places on the planet, and the experiences they bring, and the richness they provide is so fantastic. And it's exactly that. It's being able to operate you know, at all those different levels, but for me it's been really, it has really been about hearing from those people on the front lines, and places where, you know, Australia might not have so much information or a presence, in parts of Africa, for example, or even in Latin America. Bringing that's really one of the highlights of my job here, is having all those different perspectives.
Chiara, how important, we've touched on the influence of Pope Francis. How important is it that he is shining a spotlight on human trafficking globally? I mean, he mentions it quite regularly. He raises that issue. why is that important, that someone like him keeps the conversation going?
Well, the Pope, first of all, of course, has 1.3 billion followers worldwide. So I think he's got quite the stakeholder community. But I think his focus has been, since he took on the papacy, has been very much on the most vulnerable. That's been a key priority of his papacy. He's really focused on Catholic social teaching, and you can see that through the encyclicals that he's written, and really centered. I think one of the things he said is, I want a poor church for the poor. I mean, for him, that's what Catholic Church is all about, and I think he is able to being a moral authority in a sense, provide that perspective and use the network of the Catholic Church to call people to action, to make a difference, to make change. He's also, I think, become, and we see this also in the climate change space, for example, because he's spoken so much about some of these issues, the challenges of today, which do not just affect the Catholic community, it's much broader. And he's been able to, in a sense, get the attention of other world leaders. He speaks often at many of these global summits, and brings his voice and perspective, which I think is very important. The other contribution that he's made, we can't forget as well that over 80% of the global population identifies with a religion or a faith. And one of the things he's done is really focused on that interfaith context. So that's also a significant contribution, because he's bringing along people of other faiths, people of other communities, and creating this sort of global movement for change on issues such as human trafficking, our approach to migrants and refugees, violence against women, all these sorts of issues which require a coordinated global approach. So I think he's generating this sort of community across religion, across belief, and his encyclical Fratelli Tutti touches very much on that issue. We are all brothers and sisters. So I think that's the contribution that a leader such as Pope Francis can make, and he's doing that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chiara. I guess it's nearly time, I suppose, to wind up. So thinking about, we often ask our guests we have a very passionate audience. I know people here will be listening and thinking, okay, that's good, yes, but what can I do? Like, we've got people who really are ready to take the baton on. So is there something that ACRAT, whether we're members or people in schools or whoever listens to this, or actually ACRAT itself, could sort of set ourselves and think, okay, yes, we can help Chiara take this to the Pope, or we can help someone do something? Is there a key thing that you would like us to sort of explore, I guess?
Sure. I mean, I think when we look at challenges such as human trafficking, the problem is that these traffickers are always one step ahead. So I feel that sometimes, when we are trying to devise a response, as a government, we're always trying to play catch up. And I think the valuable role that an organisation like ACRAT and your members and the Catholic networks who are very much on the ground and seeing, speaking with victims on a daily basis, or having the issues very much at the fore. What you can provide is the changes that are happening, the feedback, I guess, from the victims. How did that victim become trapped in the cycle that is human trafficking? What measures can we take to put an end to this, and how can we better support survivors, of course. And I think that's a clear area where, at least with my interaction with Talitha Kum, that support to survivors or victims, that their ability to overcome what they've been through is so critical. And how can organisations like the government better support those efforts? I think that's a real contribution that an organisation like ACRAF can make. Of course, another important aspect is, and particularly in the Catholic context, is that in places like Australia, many of the hospitals and schools are run by Catholic entities. And so you have these fora where you have both the opportunity to share information, but also advocate about many people don't know what human trafficking and modern slavery is. So sharing that information in hospitals, helping to identify where there are victims, which is a key challenge, obviously, because people are not openly going to speak about these things. And finally, the other thing I think, which is very important for ACRAF and your members, here in Rome, one of the things I notice is that our region, so Australia and the Pacific, is a long way away, and there's not too much knowledge about our region and here, and I think we've got lots of experiences to be able to share and things that we've done. And so that's another key part of my role, is really trying to bring the experiences and the voices from our region here to Rome. So if ACRAF can assist in that, in providing that perspective, and you already do through networks like Talitha Kum, but if we can elevate that and highlight some of the key characteristics of the challenges in our region, I think that will be really useful. And also to showcase some of the work that's being done in our region.
Thank you, Chiara. I can imagine different people's faces popped up in my head, thinking, oh, you might like, oh yes, that person might like to do that as well. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chiara.
Yeah, so we'll close up now, but thank you, Chiara. And let's keep in touch, because I think there are lots of things we would like to connect with and learn more. So yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Cindy and Rosie.
Chiara.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Bye.